Right, this is Chef Durkin here. We are Change Connecticut. We're out here at Judson Memorial Church for a Bradley Manning event. We're here with one of the panelists on the discussion tonight, Alexa O'Brien, journalist. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us, what was your turning point for getting involved, the one thing that got you started in covering the Bradley Manning case and covering other cases that should be covered by the corporate media?
Well, I had been covering WikiLeaks releases in the year up to his Article 32, which is like a military form of a grand jury. And I had covered his pretrial confinement at Quantico. What really bothered me at the Article 32 is I knew that this was going to be a secret trial. And this is the largest leak trial in history. It is a trial that the military judge as well as the prosecutor have said is unprecedented in military law. The way that they've charged Manning, what they've charged him for. And there was no information out in the public record that really explained to me what kind of investigation was this, what kind of prosecution was this, and I felt compelled. That's the best word for it, is a compulsion. I mean, I absolutely had to find out what the hell was going on. And so, you know, I had started doing transcripts, and I just kept up that practice, and you know, I reconstructed the docket, which we don't have a public docket for this trial, court rulings, legal filings, and so I just started tracking that, publishing transcripts, and that's sort of what happened.
So just for people out there to give a little update on the Bradley Manning case up until probably around now or so, where do you see it going from here? Any you know, updates on that case?
Well, we're in April 2013. The next session is next week. It's going to be the 10th to the 12th. And a couple of things that are going to be discussed there is the government motion to close the court for the Osama bin Laden evidence. So the government wants to basically hold court off-site in some, you know, secure facility, a SCIF, a sensitive compartmentalized information facility, and have their, you know, Navy SEAL guy bring up their Osama bin Laden evidence. And what that is essentially the government's asserting that for their aiding the enemy case, that Osama bin Laden had, you know, WikiLeaks material on his computer. The Afghan war logs and State Department information. I mean, that's what we know. This is very controversial because, you know, Osama bin Laden also felt that, you know, he also recommended to people that they should read Bob Woodward's book, Obama's War. You know, Bob Woodward's work, as Glenn Greenwald has pointed out, has contained top secret information, which Manning never leaked. Manning leaked only secret or below. In fact, collateral murder, we're here tonight to talk about collateral murder, it's the 3rd anniversary, is not classified. David Finkel's book, The Good Soldiers, has a transcript of the cockpit pilots in this video. And this book was published before the charged offenses against Mannings. That's a very controversial charge. So that's going to happen. We also are going to have a couple of motions related to witnesses and evidence, and then we go to trial on June 3rd.
For anybody who doesn't know it, what's the one thing that people need to know about Bradley Manning case, or for those who don't know about Bradley Manning, give maybe a summary for people who may not know who Bradley Manning is and how important his case really is for Americans in general, for everybody's rights.
Bradley Manning is an American soldier who, at a very, very young age, leaked, admittedly, information to WikiLeaks. It included the U.S. State Department cables, the Guantanamo detainee assessment profiles, collateral murder, which is a video of a July 12, 2007 Baghdad airstrike, which killed 2 Reuters journalists, other civilians, and injured 2 children. He also leaked, admittedly, a low-level CIA analysis reports on, you know, destroying WikiLeaks and things of this nature. In terms of the character of Bradley Manning, people oftentimes paint him as a very unstable character, but, you know, or completely, you know, some kind of anarchist, some free information anarchist. You know, the Bradley Manning in court is actually very respectful of the military. He only speaks highly of his command now, which changed from his command in Iraq. Since he's been in pretrial confinement, he has a different command. He, you know, admitted to service discrediting charges and prejudicial to good order and discipline. This is not somebody who is some kind of crazy, unstable maniac.
You could have also seen that too when someone leaked his full statement. Anybody could read, including the transcript that you helped put together for people out there. Maybe tell us where anybody could find that transcript to read his actual testimony.
Yeah, it's a really illuminating statement because he really goes through and describes, what his motivation was. It was altruistic. And the fact that he had approached the New York Times, he had approached the Washington Post. WikiLeaks was the only media organization within his reach that he could safely leak to. And he talks about, like in the case of collateral murder, his portion about collateral murder is particularly poignant for me because you can tell by what he says and how he describes, the seeming bloodlust of these pilots. It really affected him. In fact, in court, his voice changed a bit. And the other thing, too, is Bradley Manning is really young. He's a really young kid. This is not some, middle-aged, jaded, psycho. I mean, like, he's very young. He's very methodical in his thinking. He's very logical, and he's incredibly earnest. In fact, I say this, and I hate to be hackneyed, but and this is a compliment, he's unfashionably earnest. Like, he's a really earnest character, and his earnestness is a gigantic part of his personality. It's what's so endearing about him in the courtroom. I mean, he's disarmed the military prosecutor. There's no mendacity to this kid. This trial is very unprecedented in military law because he's been charged with aiding the enemy, but he's also been charged with what's called Specification 1 of Charge 2, this cause to be published intelligence on the internet belonging to the United States government. There is no existing federal law or military punitive article for that charge. It's a defense essentially calls it a made-up offense, but it dovetails, the language of it dovetails right into aiding the enemy. This kind of cause to be published is also very provocative language in light of Obama's inquisition against whistleblowers.
So, what you've talked to different journalists and all that, and do you see the trend continuing where journalists are starting to cover it more, or do you see still a blackout of the Bradley Manning case in general?
I think we are seeing more journalists coming to this case because we're heading into trial. I want to just say a lot of very important information has been happening in the pretrial. A lot of the litigation around, the instructions for the charges and what the language actually means and what the government's allowed to use, what the defense is allowed to use, has all been hashed out. The case law and the precedent for the Espionage Act and for aiding the enemy is also being hashed out. We know from the pretrial, for example, that the State Department couldn't remember who in the State Department testified to the U.S. Congress. I mean, that level of brazen ridiculousness, frankly, in my opinion. So it's getting better. I think what's important is that we need reasoned, expert coverage of what is happening legally, what its ramifications are on the First Amendment, and on military law, and that hasn't happened yet.
So just to wrap it up here, anything else you'd like to say about the Bradley Manning case? Where do you see it going from here? Are you more optimistic or pessimistic on his case? Do you see more of a trend where people are starting to learn about it more, and or people still not learning about it still, as they should be as Americans, because it affects everybody here? Where do you see it going from there?
I have a hard time speculating because, with this trial, anything could change at any minute. I will say this. The Americans are the ones who are having this sort of myopic or amnesia about this particular trial. It appears to me that the rest of the world is aware that this is going on. And I think that a lot of what this trial is really the war on terror is on trial, the press is on trial, and Bradley Manning is on trial. So it is essentially a conjoining of all of those issues, and it tells me that that's why it's important. Where we'll go from here, more will be revealed.
Primarily here to raise awareness about Bradley Manning and the video that I helped co-produce because I feel that not enough people in the United States have seen it, and if they haven't seen it in a year, they need to see it again.
And thousands of other documents. They really want to get him. They're not. They're just going forward like a machine to try and crush Bradley Manning and crush anyone who would expose government corruption and criminality. And it does fit a pattern.